I saw this quote somewhere that was inspiration, not comparison. And I think that is so key to a lot of like close friendships because, in close friendships, Hi, welcome back to the ttyl podcast. The scene today looks a little bit different, as you can tell. Today I'm in my bedroom and I'm doing my first solo episode because this week, unfortunately, Adrian got sick, I think with the stomach flu or norovirus. So he was knocked out for the entire week and he still is recovering a little bit, but the show must go on, even though we literally took 2 weeks off. I think he said he was at a point where he went outside to take a 20-minute walk and then crashed out for 3 hours. So for this episode, I wanted to do a little recap of the year so far, what I've learned in terms of 3 categories: solo, social, and situationships/dating. But before I get into that, I recently turned 26, and just as a little recap of that weekend, I threw like a masquerade party. It was so much fun to dress up. I've always wanted to do or go to a masquerade ball. But that night, I think 5 people / beings threw up. Basically, like, we set up the whole table and the spread and like the charcuterie board, and then everyone was kind of away to get ready. And then when we came back out, Buster, my roommate's dog, was on the ground by the table just like munching away at something. And we realized that he had gotten a couple spots of the charcuterie board, and it was actually so scary because there were grapes on there, there were like toothpicks and stuff, so he ended up eating like some chunks of brie, blueberries, strawberries, some toothpicks. It was really, really, really scary. His mama and papa ended up inducing him to vomit, so everything is well, but he was the first being to throw up that night. I will not disclose who else, but basically, as you can guess, Adrian was one of them when he got his food poisoning / well, we thought it was food poisoning, but then it turned out to probably be some kind of stomach flu. But anyways, this year so far, right now it's like almost the end of February. I want to say January felt like 5 months. I don't know why. Like, I just think so much happened. I grew a lot. I like experienced a lot of things that I haven't experienced before, but it was long in a good way. Like, I feel like I was doing a lot and like I was able to be present and like enjoy everything. Okay, so kind of going off my birthday, I think we can start with the social component of this podcast. So this is going to be like friendships and community and like how my perspective of friendships has changed over the years and throughout my 20s. I was talking to a girly pop during my birthday party, and last year I also threw something, and before that party I was having these nightmares of like people not showing up. Honestly, it was such an irrational fear. Like, these are amazing people and like I love my friends and my community, but I think where it kind of came from was last year I didn't feel like I had a very stable sense of community yet. Like, I had just moved to New York maybe 8 months prior to that, and I definitely was meeting a lot of amazing people, but I just hadn't like found my groove quite yet. But like, a huge difference between hosting and planning a birthday last year versus this year is that I actually at one point just like didn't really feel stressed for this. Once I had like all the activity stations, all the decorations, all the food and everything planned out, I like had so much fun just going through the motion of executing rather than like stressing out about the different things. But yeah, I was talking to this girly pop and she was asking me like how it felt being 26, like if it feels any different. And honestly, this birthday didn't feel like a birthday for some reason. I think like in the past, like when I was younger, I always like loved birthdays, but I always felt a little bit selfish in a way celebrating, because I just think it's weird that there's just so much of this kind of attention on you for one day. And like, as much as I love to do that and celebrate others and like give that attention to other people on their birthday, it's just like kind of a weird, overwhelming feeling on like my birthday, even though I do appreciate it. But I think this year maybe the reason that it didn't feel like a birthday, one, I just think like February has been back-to-back birthdays. Every single weekend there's just like so much to celebrate and it's kind of like just go go go, so didn't really have time to like soak in this feeling. But I also feel like it's because this year I really feel like I have a better sense of community that's more stable, and instead of like just one day of feeling an overwhelming amount of love and support, I feel like this is so cheesy, I'm so sorry, but I feel that every day, and on that day it's just like even more of a chance for me to soak it in and also express that gratitude and like have everyone come and just like mingle. And like I love bringing people together in that way and like having people meet my other friends and everything. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm really proud of myself for cultivating throughout this past year, because that's a huge difference in how I felt between like my 25th birthday and my 26th. Okay, so kind of going back more to just like friendships and how it evolves in my 20s in general. I feel like every single year my definition of friendships changes, and I think more and more I'm experiencing, you know, those like long distance friendships where you kind of call I would say like every quarter, or it's just like you pick back up where you left off if you haven't seen them in a while or you live in different cities. But even in New York, I feel like a lot of my good friends I will see once a month, and I think that is still kind of crazy to me. I think like when I first meet someone and like we really vibe and like there's potential to be good friends, I will still sometimes feel that pressure of like, oh, I should like be hanging out with them maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that. But I think over time I've realized that for the most part, most people are kind of in that cadence of seeing friends once a month, or like maybe you have that like very, very core group that you will see every week or multiple times a week. But then beyond that, it's like very normal to just see people once a month or even longer, honestly. And so I think now where I kind of am is that like I know for myself, I'm not a great texter, but I also know a lot of my friends aren't great texters. So I think it's nice when there's that mutual understanding of like, I'm gonna text back in 5 to 8 business days and they will too, but it's like chill, and then intermittently we'll like plan something to like meet up and hang out. So that's kind of been a lot of my friendships in the city. Again, I'm not sure how sustainable that is, or you know, if things change in terms of like what I want to, but for now that's what works. And I am just like really grateful for everyone, because I think it's hard to balance like your personal goals and work and friendships and like other hobbies and just everything, because like a lot of people are working that typical 9 to 5, and then after work you have to do your own things, and then it's really only weekends that you have free. I think like when I reflect on the year so far, I have put a lot of my time into my friends and community rather than my personal goals, and that's always like a tug of war that I'm battling internally, because there are so many things that I want to do, including job stuff, but also my personal content creation outside of this podcast. But I think honestly, like I know that when I do focus more on that stuff, I do have to wean off of my social life a little bit more. And I've just realized that when I do that, I'm less happy and like satisfied with life, because I think I really value those connections and like quality time with people. And so I think going this stretch of time, like not forcing myself to sacrifice that, I definitely have felt more like myself and satisfied. But at the same time, I really do want to like have some kind of discipline for myself to work on my personal goals. So that's kind of a TBD thing in the air, but I don't know. I wonder when I'll want it bad enough. I'm wondering if like I could do something that's like, if I break up my goals into the quarters of the year, so that way I can dedicate 3 months to something without feeling like I'm committing my entire life to it. Maybe that's something interesting that I could try this year. One of the last things that I wanted to touch on for this part is the importance of finding your people. I think especially in a city like New York, there's just so many people, so many options, so many friends of friends and mutuals that you can meet. And I'm someone that like, I always want to be everyone's best friend. So like I meet people and I'm just so excited, and like I want to get to know them and I want to hang out and follow up and everything, which is still like generally the case. But I'm also realizing that like at some point I have to prioritize my time with people, and that made me think about, you know, that whole saying about like the 5 of your closest friends are kind of who you become, and the mannerisms, the values, the beliefs that you also start to reflect. And I kind of do this audit every so often throughout the year just to like kind of assess how I feel about who I'm becoming. As a recovering people pleaser, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to navigate, how to not have that mindset of like wanting to be everyone's bestie and like pour into everyone, because like objectively that is not sustainable, and it's also like not everyone's values will align with mine and vice versa. And I think that's something that's hard for me to accept. and it makes it feel like either I'm rejecting people as friends or like they're rejecting me as friends. Still not really sure how to balance that. I think at the end of the day, I know I need to do what's best for myself. But anyways, some of the things that I really appreciate about the people in my life and the things that I really value and look for are things like people that have some kind of ambition, whether it's for something big or small, work related or not, just like working towards something or like trying new things, having that like adventurous spirit, being able to support each other in that. Another thing is, I saw this quote somewhere that was inspiration, not comparison. And I think that is so key to a lot of like close friendships, because, you know, in close friendships, you see each other a lot of mannerisms become the same, a lot of humor becomes the same, and even things like fashion or like, you know, how you live your life or ways to do things start like overlapping with each other. And I feel like in the past I've heard language in some of my friendships where it's like, oh, you're copying me, something like that, in a potentially negative light. But I think seeing it as inspiration, as flattery, as just like, you know, the world is big enough for everyone to just enjoy the same things, and I think it's just fun to share those things together. That just kind of creates more of a supportive group of people around me. And then also just like all my friends, we are similar and we share similar interests, but there's also so many unique things about them and like different hobbies and interests that they have on their own. All my close friends, like they also have their own friend groups separate from like me or like whoever else we are a part of. And I really appreciate that because I want the most for everyone, you know, like I do that too. And I just think it's like really important to be able to be immersed in like different perspectives and like with different people, because that way like you can always learn from each other, and like your web of knowledge and like your interactions and everything are even wider and like I guess like diverse in that sense, which I feel like brings an interesting dynamic to my friendships and my community as well. Okay, and so the last point that I want to make about friendships kind of ties into the next section, which is solitude and being single. I've mentioned this before on the pod, but if you didn't know, I've been single for a period of time, and I've been trying to be really intentional about staying single because low-key, I'd be a serial dater, but I'm really glad that I did take this time to just like find myself, whatever that means, and just like really learn to be independent and like learn to rely on myself for love and to fill that space with not like with a person, but with I guess like myself, or like be self-sufficient in that sense. And a question that I feel like sometimes comes up is like, if you have besties, do you feel like your friendships can fulfill you the same way that a romantic relationship can? And I've thought about this for a long time, and I think they can in a lot of ways. Like one of the best things that came out of my singleness so far has been being able to rely on my friends for more things. I think for a lot of aspects of life, friendships can be fulfilling enough, but I feel like there's this difference in a friendship versus a romantic relationship, where in a romantic relationship you kind of have more of an obligation to that person. Like obviously I want the best for my friends, but there's something about your romantic partner that, you know, your lifestyles kind of merge. I guess you like would sacrifice more. Well, I mean, I would sacrifice for my friends too, but maybe not in the same way or like same extent and magnitude as I would for a romantic partner. I don't know. I hope that doesn't come across poorly. Like obviously I care for and like will go out of my way to help my friends, but there's also just this layer of obligation that is not really there for friends where it is for romantic partners. I think honestly like that is something that I do miss in relationships. Like I like caring for someone to that extent, so I do like sometimes crave that. But I also know that during my singlehood I like just did not have the capacity at all to like show up 100% in that way and in the way that I wanted to. So yeah, anyways, moving on to the solo part. I honestly think it's so important for everyone to experience singleness and enjoy their independence at some point in their lives. Although I feel like there's a lot of nuance around this, so just to give some context, I have kind of been like in and out of relationships for the past 7 years and never truly had a dedicated time to be fully single and fully like healing. I kind of jumped from relationship to relationship and didn't have genuinely enough time to fully process and heal. I'm totally in that camp where I believe that you need to love yourself first before you can love others. And like in my mind, the healthiest relationships stem from two people that are whole on their own, and they come together and they like only add to each other's lives, and they can be dependent on each other, but at the end of the day, to their core, they are independent and they're self-fulfilled and satisfied, but they have enough love for themselves. They know how to love themselves so that they can healthily love others too. Also like know how they like to be loved. I think part of this also comes with like self-worth and self-value. I think what I realized during my singlehood was that I actually had pretty low self-worth, and that's something that I had to come to terms with, accept, and build for myself. This is kind of for those of you that are going through breakups or are still like healing from a breakup or something. Some of the best pieces of advice that I got from friends and like my community was that if you feel like you're missing something from your relationship, like how can you do that for yourself? So like this is like not a real example, but for example, if my ex always bought me like flowers or like coffee every morning, then like, you know, those are things that I can do for myself to show myself that love. And like over time with consistency, that can like build into trusting yourself and like learning to be reliable to yourself and like building some of that self-love. Obviously that goes for like anything that you're craving from a relationship. This might sound weird, but like even things like physical touch, like you can hug yourself, you can like pet your arm. I know that might sound weird, but like literally just try it. It actually helps a lot. No, just knowing that like you can hug yourself and like soothe yourself and be there for yourself too. And I think sometimes there's a stigma of, you know, doing things by yourself, going on solo dates. Like not really, it's like very, very normal and like people do that all the time. But I just feel like sometimes there might be a little bit of judgment. Learning to appreciate your own company and spend time with yourself and like honestly get to know yourself is really valuable, because at the end of the day, you are the only person that is going to be with yourself for your entire life. And so might as well get to a point where you like hanging out with yourself and like you like who you are. Honestly, that's also super powerful to develop in singlehood, because that kind of self-love and like confidence in who you are is just like when you get into a relationship, if both people are assured of themselves, then, you know, for example, like I feel like if I got into a relationship but I feel secure and like confident in who I am, then I won't necessarily fear being broken up with or like fear that relationship is gonna end, because I know at the end of the day I'm here for myself and like I don't need to rely on someone else to feel complete, if that makes sense. Another piece of advice that I saw probably from TikTok, but it was actually so helpful, was that if you find yourself missing your ex or like just like being really sad and upset about them in the relationship, something that really helps is becoming your ex. So like if there are things that you admired about them, like whether it's their hobbies, their characteristics, their traits, like their style, their sense of their taste or whatever it was, trying to become like them or like just trying to develop those things for yourself is a way to almost like mend that loss, because those are traits or skills or whatever it is that you can also build for yourself, and like you don't need them necessarily to like fulfill that for you. And also it's just like nice to have something to like focus on and work towards and channel some of that energy on, rather than just like missing them. Okay, now moving right along to the situationship / dating portion. Man, oh man, online dating and apps, what a world. I just think the culture of Hinge and like online dating, it's such a game and I hate it. I think there are awesome people on there, but it's just really up to luck to like find them. Honestly, I feel like my profile isn't even that good because it doesn't really show my true personality, and I feel that way about like the people that I see on the app too. Like I just feel like you never know what you're gonna get when you go on a date with someone from a dating app. I don't know, I feel like it does take a lot of time and effort and like resources, but I feel like for someone that really wants to find someone and like has all that time and effort and energy, then could be worth just to like cast a wide net and like go on a bunch of first dates and like just see and meet people. But man, I do not have that kind of energy or time, so my dating app experience was very short-lived. But I think in terms of my reflection so far on the year and like in my singleness slash like dating periods, I've learned a lot about attachment styles and just like about relationships in general and what I want and what a good healthy relationship could look like. But having that all up in my head doesn't really do much. So I feel like being able to date a little bit has helped me be able to actually practice what I've learned. Like most notably with attachment styles, I personally run a little bit anxious naturally, but I've been in secure relationships and I know what it feels like to be secure, especially if the other person is secure. I've also learned now that I'm able to like realize when I'm feeling anxious and like having an anxious thought pattern, and I'm able to like try to coax myself out of that and lean more into like a secure reaction, or like a just operate out of a secure attachment style. So like that's something that I didn't know that I would have been able to do if I didn't experience. And then something about situationships is that there's generally two types of people in a situationship. One of them is non-committal, and then the other one has low self-worth. And the person that has low self-worth, even though they know that the other person doesn't want to commit, they might think like, oh, maybe one day they will, even though they literally know and the person has literally told them that they do not want to commit, because maybe there's some kind of facade of an emotional need being met or a physical need being met, and it's like scary to think that that won't be there, even if it means it's not going to be a committed relationship at the end of the day. That's also why it's important to know your self-worth and build that self-love and to know what you deserve. Okay, that's all I'll say about all of that. For someone with low self-worth in a situationship, I think it's really hard to accept that like you don't deserve this, or that you're actually in the long run better off not in the situationship. But if you are resonating with any of this, then I would just like to affirm you that you truly do deserve more, and there is somebody out there that wants to commit to you. Truly have to believe that, and I believe that for you. That reminds me of this thing that one of my friends told me after my last relationship, and basically I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just like never gonna find someone that likes me that I like back, and like this is it. But she told me to just write a list, physically write it out, whether it's pen to paper or just like typing it out in like your notes. She basically told me to write down everything that I could possibly want in a partner, whether it's like really, really, really specific or random things to like, you know, core values and non-negotiables and stuff like that. Low-key, I felt very skeptical about this because I was like, this is just like way too specific, that there's no way that I'll ever meet someone in my lifetime that fits this description. But I just did it because I was like, well, it's not gonna hurt. But basically her philosophy is that just the fact that you thought of these things in a person, they exist. Like they exist. There is a person out there like this because you had this thought. Like you wouldn't have had this thought if this didn't exist. And I know I just said the same thing 3 different times, but hopefully that made sense. I guess that's like manifestation at work, but you should try it and just see what happens, because why not? And also it's kind of nice to like put everything down in one place, and you know, that's kind of a way to like get to know yourself too, and like realize what you actually want versus what are deal breakers and non-negotiables versus what are like nice to haves and stuff. Ooh, but the other thing that I learned during this period of time is that I also want to become the type of person that who I want is attracted to. And lastly, I think this year so far, there's been so many ups and downs and roller coasters of, oh, I like want to date versus I'm like so not ready to date, blah blah blah. But I'm also in the camp of things happen when you don't expect it to. I feel like things always happen when I like completely just swear off guys. I'm like whatever, trying to decenter men from my brain, just like focus on work, focus on whatever I'm doing, and then they just come running. But I think it's like a really good sign for yourself when you don't feel like you need a boyfriend, or you're like you don't feel like you need a relationship, because I think that's a sign that you are starting to feel more self-sufficient and independent, and like you are a whole person and you feel that on your own. And I think only then is when you are even like healthily emotionally available to pour into someone else. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts as a newly 26-year-old. As a wrap for this episode, I guess like my last two pieces of advice is like, one, build yourself first, love yourself first. I feel like that's so cheesy, and like I know some people hate that saying, but I truly believe it's one of the most important things that you can do for yourself in your lifetime. And two is trust in timing. Like I've heard so many stories of people getting together, and if they had met a year prior or like even a couple months prior, like they just weren't at times in their lives where they would have been like ready to be in a healthy relationship. And so, you know, we have our entire lives to be in a relationship, so there's no rush during singlehood if you are single. Oh, I'm also in the camp that like, if you know, you know. And I hate when people say that because I'm like, how do you know? Like, how is that even possible? But for some reason, I just really have that belief. And I think because of that, like, just build your self-love, build your confidence, know what you want so that you don't settle, and like build that belief that like there are people out there that will treat you how you want to be treated, and hold yourself accountable to not settle. I think my friends have held me accountable so much. Like they will tell me straight up, like, Sarah, this is not the one, which I appreciate that because I feel like rose-colored glasses are really real and it's very difficult to discern in the moment. This feels like it might have turned more into a dating episode, but in general, I think life, friends, community, everything has been so good so far in this year. Anyways, I'm not sure if this episode really had any kind of story arc to it, but I hope you enjoyed it regardless, and thanks so much for listening to what goes on in my one brain cell up here. Thanks for spending time with me reflecting on the new year so far. I hope you guys are having a good week. Just remember, love yourself and don't settle. With that, ttyl.